I feel like I'm drunk right now. I don't know how to explain this feeling that I'm having. I'm like, I'm exasperated by this whole development tonight. But in any event, it is the Pond Hockey Eagles postgame show, and it is time for Kayla's Diamond Debate, brought to us by Mark's Jewelers. Kayla, of course, the holidays coming up. It's not too late to get to Mark's, I guess, right?
Yeah, and if the Eagles ruined your holidays, like I think right now they are ruining ours, Mark's Jewelers will absolutely not. They have some fantastic stuff, and it is not too late. You can still get out there and get something for that special someone. They have fantastic rings, earrings, the pearl necklaces, everything that you need for a holiday gift. So make sure that you do not miss out and go to Mark's Jewelers today. That brings us to our Diamond Debate. You can go vote on our Twitter poll right now. It is still open. A whole lot went wrong, and I kind of wanted to turn away from the TV, especially at the end there. And I put something out saying, no way Drew Lock can go up the field and score, right, as a joke, and it actually did happen. So let's start with the Diamond Debate, though. Once again, that's on Twitter. Right now, this offensive roster has a lot of talent, and it's not being shown. Do you think it's an offensive scheme thing? Do you think it's on the turnovers? Is it all the above? Mike, I'm going to start with you. There's a lot of question marks. Is there anything you can narrow it down
I don't understand, and I haven't understood it all year, Kayla, on why they get away from things. And they show the initiative. Like tonight was the perfect night to get the running game going again because the other team doesn't stop the runs. I'm going, they finally followed instructions. And then they just get discombobulated instead of sticking with something. And that's panic in play calling. So Brian Johnson's got to take some heat. I think it's panic in play calling. But Sirianni's supposed to be the overseer of everything. And, like, instead of him saying to Brian Johnson, let's get back to the run now, nothing happens. And the game plan just kind of dissolves. So it's a coaching problem right now. And it's the quarterback that can't overcome the coaching problems, the scheme problems, the play calling. The quarterback is not able to make the plays he used to make. That's what it is for me.
And Hurts trying to play hero ball at the end there, but we saw kind of on a graphic all over social media that Kenny Gainwell was wide open at the end of the game. Plus, on top of that, by the way, you only had to get 15 yards for Jake Elliott to have a chance. Mark, I mean, at the end of the game there, what type of play call is that? Is it Jalen Hurts just trying to play hero ball? We go back to the same question back and forth, but something's got to give at this point because the coaching can't be changed. The offensive coordinators are not going to change, but maybe Jalen Hurts needs to step up and say, listen, we've got to win some games now.
If I learned anything from the Carson Wentz era, it's that as a quarterback, you can't be a part of the problem. You have to be only part of the solution. Now, you could call that unfair, but once you're a franchise quarterback, that's the deal. That's why you sign that contract for that amount of money. And Jalen Hurts today, without question, was a part of the problem. I know people will go back to the tush pushes and the touchdowns and the scrambles, and that's all great. But you can't miss Kenny Gainwell that wide open in the flat trying to throw the football 50 yards downfield when just 15 yards will do when you're going to be throwing into double coverage in that type of situation. You can't be airing the ball out on a 1st and 10 when you're already up 17-13, 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter and try to get that nail in the coffin touchdown to a guy you could barely trust for his entire career in Quez Watkins. That's not a coaching decision at that point. That is a read and a poor attempt at execution by Jalen Hurts. And look, the coaching staff is not at all pushed aside when it comes to the blame game here, but I watched the quarterback tonight have an awful regression, a continued awful regression in Jalen Hurts. And I'm a huge Jalen Hurts fan. I know there are better days ahead for him, but tonight and the previous 2 games, a far cry from that.
And Seth, I feel like the conversation is consistently blaming the coaches, blaming the scheme, but at one point is this on Jalen Hurts that he's got to step up and be that guy? I know you've been sticking up for him all year, but at this point, do you put the blame more on him?
You know, people always say, that it always starts at the top. So I'm going to start at the top. I'm not going to just say it's Jalen, and I'm not just going to say it's Nick Sirianni. I'm going to go a little higher. I'm going to say that, this is an organizational thing. Because the more and more I look at this, the more and more this begins to look like 2018 all over again. When Doug Peterson was the head coach, and Frank Reich was here, and so on and so forth. It looks eerily similar. These moves that you make, coaching-wise, and player moves and things of that nature, these just don't seem like moves to me that you would make from a coach's standpoint. The coach knows that, this is my defensive coordinator. He might be struggling, but this is my guy, okay? So we're going to transition to another guy who is an advisor, to our defense. And what can he do at this point in time that makes a difference? It doesn't seem right to me. It doesn't smell right to me. It feels like, somebody from upstairs made this decision, and now you will, Nick Sirianni out here to look like the guy who made the decision. They did the same exact thing to Doug.
With Mike Groh.
They did the same exact thing to Doug, and it's starting to look like the same scenario all over again. Who's actually really making the decisions on what the game plan looks like and how much you should run and how much you shouldn't run? These are legitimate questions. They're legitimate questions, and I'm gonna tell you, I'm digging and I'm getting some answers, and it seems more like to me that what we're seeing is there are too many cooks in the kitchen and there's too many voices. Football coaches are football coaches. GMs and personnel people are GM and personnel people. The analytics people provide numbers for you to make good decisions and for you as players to look at the numbers and say, hey, you know what? This is a tendency. When they get in this situation, this is what they like to do. These are what these prospective departments do, But when they step outside of, the department that they live in and they're making decisions and doing things that don't really pertain to them, like if I'm a football coach, then let me coach my players. Let me say who plays and who doesn't. Let me say who's active and who's not. Let me say who's on the roster and who's not. Because if I'm coaching and you've hired me to be the coach and I'm supposed to know what I'm talking about, aren't I supposed to know those things? Okay? But there are so many things over the years. You're going to say how he controls the roster. He controls. How do you do that? How do you do that and be a head coach? And then you see all these contingency plans. You can go all the way back to, we talked about in the pregame, the contingency plan. Doug Peterson is hired, okay? You hire Jim Schwartz before you hire Doug Peterson. If I'm the head coach, shouldn't I have a say who's my defensive coordinator? Okay? Jim Schwartz, I think he's the contingency plan. Because if Doug Peterson, who's never been a head coach before, falls on his face, okay, we can just move Jim Schwartz in, and all of a sudden, we got the perfect case scenario where we don't have to blow the whole thing up. All we got to do is bring in another offensive guy. You hire Sean Desai, Mike, and I'm going to give it to you in a minute. You hire Sean Desai, but you bring in Matt Patricia, to look over his shoulder. Why? Because you're not sure whether he's the guy or not, and you got to have a contingency plan, and an insurance policy on the backside. And sure enough, because you got an insurance policy, you got to call it. And then you call it, and it upsets the whole game plan and the whole environment around it. And people can talk about it and that not necessarily being the case. But you know what? There are some people in that locker room that don't like, Matt Patricia. There are some people in that locker room who don't know Matt Patricia. And there are some people, so now you've divided your locker room defensively, and you got some guys that like him, some guys that don't. You got some players that played tonight that hadn't been playing. Oh, they love Matt Patricia. But you got some guys that didn't get time to play tonight or minimize playing time tonight. That's like, what the hell's going on?
Let's cut to the chase. Are we talking about wrongful ownership meddling here?
Hey, listen, call it what you will, okay? The proof is out there. And we've seen this picture before. It's not like this is something I'm conjuring up, This is not something that I don't have some legitimate answers to, and I'm digging even more. I would never throw people under the bus, but the legitimate people that I'm getting the answers from, it's legitimate, okay? If you're going to hire –
we're talking Jerry Jones behind the green door? Is that what we're talking about?
Potentially worse. Because you want to know something? Listen, and this is nothing against Doug Peterson, love him. Nothing against Nick Sirianni, don't know him enough to not like him, okay? But who was Doug Peterson that you would go hire him as your head coach? Come on now. with all the valid guys that were out there at that time, and then you bring in the insurance policy, lo and behold, they had no idea whatsoever that Doug Peterson was going to win a Super Bowl in his second or his third year. That shocked the hell out of him. Okay?
Backup QB.
So then when Doug Peterson got to a place that he had enough of the meddling, you know, I've said it before. I don't know it to be 100% true, but it's what I believe, you know. Doug Peterson wasn't fired. Doug Peterson told him to go kick rocks. I'm out. I got a Super Bowl on my resume, and you owe me 2 more years of salary. Peace. I can get another job, okay? So then, in comes Nick Sirianni. He could be a great head coach. I don't know. His record indicates that he clearly is, okay? But who the heck was Nick Sirianni?
Well, the theme there is that both those coaches, Doug Peterson and Nick Sirianni, new coaches that Jeffrey Lurie respected in Frank Reich and obviously Andy Reid.
They were also controllable.
Very true. They didn't have the previous experience or the resume to combat anything. And to your point, Seth, this goes back to the days of Doug Peterson and specifically their win in Green Bay against the Packers, when in that game they ran the ball more than they threw the ball. And after that game, this was put out in The Athletic. I think The Inquirer also wrote a story on this, and ESPN, where they detailed this meeting with Jeffrey Lurie and his analytical department, where they simply talked about, oh, you won that game, but you ran the ball a lot. Why? And Doug said, well, that's how you won the game. We didn't like how you won it, basically, is the way it was perceived.
See, now, that's the problem that I have with analytics.
1,000%.
It's not that analytics doesn't serve a purpose in the game, but when the analytics department becomes so powerful, you know, that they begin to supersede the coaches who are supposed to know football like they know football. You know, you understand what I'm saying? Like the analytics people really know football. You know, analytics are probabilities. They're numbers. It's a possibility that it could work out like this. But a football coach they got their hands in the dirt. They're out there with the players every single day. You know, they're the ones that stand on the sideline with a gut feeling about what we should do or what we shouldn't do, okay? So there's no accountability when it comes to the numbers, because when it doesn't work out, no coach who is driven strictly by the analytics and doing what the analytics is telling him to do, that coach doesn't deserve to be fired. He doesn't, because you're telling him, your analytics department is telling him, this is what you should do. And if you don't do it, you have to answer for it, you know? So you do it, and then you're the scapegoat when it doesn't work out?
Right. I think right now, too, to look at just back a few years, they haven't lost 3 games in a row since 2021. And Nick Sirianni, after the game, he also said that we just have to get through the storm. That brings me back to the point that Deacon said a little bit earlier on. There's been teams in slumps this year. The 49ers were in one, were able to get out of it. Is this Eagles team in a slump whatsoever, or did they just get lucky earlier in the year and were able to pull out big wins? Because we talked about it week after week. Yeah, they're 10-1. Cool, there's still a lot to work on, and they've just gotten worse since earlier on this season. Are they in a slump right now? Can they win out? Or is the NFC East up for grabs at this point? Because I know Dallas has a tougher schedule, Mark, but right now the Eagles look like they could lose against anybody.
Yeah, I mean, they got the Giants again twice, but as I said in the pregame show, if you're going to be predictable as an offense, this is the worst possible time to be predictable. When you're facing a team that you faced 3 times last year, and then you're facing your former defensive coordinator in Jonathan Gannon. So although I don't think the Eagles are going to lose out, I do believe that without question the NFC East is up for grabs, with, of course, the Miami Dolphins still being on the schedule for the Dallas Cowboys. But in terms of turning things around right now for the Eagles and having a chance to win it, this isn't anything new that we have watched all season long. And to Bill's point earlier, the Eagles have tried to show us, again, that this has been the team they are. They have had the good bounces. They have had the good fortune. Yes, they had made plays when they needed to make plays to win football games. But you can't live like that to a 10-1 record. And as great as a 10-1 record is, I never looked at them, watching them throughout the entire season, every single snap the way we do, and went, this team right here, this is a team that's going to compete for a Super Bowl. No, they had to prove it against the true upper echelon team like the San Francisco 49ers, epically failed that test, and then they went into Dallas and they wet the bed in Dallas. Then they went up and faced a team that is just always struggling to be around 500 in Seattle with a backup quarterback against a terrible defense, and with their MVP caliber quarterback couldn't put them up more than 17 points. This is who they are.
Yes, it is. All right. So, here's the thing. Until tonight, I never thought it was possible for the Eagles to lose one of these games for the rest of the year, but also, more importantly, lose to what we thought would be an inferior team in the playoffs. And even if they wind up going to Tampa Bay as the 5th seed, I now believe they could possibly lose that game. Let's take a break. On the other side, John McMullen will join us with his analysis right here on the Pound the Hockey Eagle postgame show live from Ocean Casino. 2017, they lose to the Seahawks. I still can't believe it. We're back after this.
Hello.
And welcome
To the Diamond Debate
with Liam and Hillary.
in the heart of Montgomeryville, Pennsylvania.
What you got for us today on your right hand, Hill?
Today we've got a right-hand ring, Liam.
What is that?
It's a ring that you would wear on your right hand.
That's it?
That's all there is to it.
Okay.
It's meant to balance your left hand situation, or if you're not engaged or married, it says, I'm not engaged or married, but I still have this over here that's sparkly.
A lot of other ways you can say that.
No, not if you're trying to wear jewelry. Which
Okay.
one's your favorite?
I love this Art Deco moment. I mean, with these beautiful baguettes and round diamonds. I mean, who wouldn't say no to one of these?
Baguettes are hot right now. People also love an eternity band. It's beautiful.
Great for the other hand.
That's right. So come on down here, for love grows here at Mark's Jewelers.
Every day of the week except Sundays and Mondays.
That's because we are closed.